Retirement planning isn't a one and done process, but it does start by asking the important first questions. We're going to talk today about 4 important questions that you should be asking yourself as you plan for your retirement. We're also going to talk about the important changes that have taken place in retirement planning, how it's changed from previous generations, and why so many people fail to hit their retirement goals. First of all, so many of us are busy and we just never take the time to properly plan our retirement and think about how we're going to live in our retirement years. So as you're thinking about these 4 important questions, now these questions don't really just center on money. While money is an important part of this, there are other non-money things or non-financial things that we want to think about. So what are you going to do with this newfound freedom that you're going to have in retirement? Are you going to jump into volunteerism? Are you going to work on your physical health, spend time with family, or all the other things that you could kind of add to your schedule? Without a clear vision, though, it's really hard to prepare for this next chapter. Now, be sure your vision is really unique and custom for your situation, and that you've thought ahead and kind of spent the time thinking ahead of what you want this ideal life to look like. It may include taking great leisurely vacations and taking walks on the beach with your family, but whatever it is, it should be your passionate, important goals. So in a traditional way of thinking about retirement, kind of in prior generations, so many people worked until they were 65. Oftentimes, they had a pension, they had Social Security, and maybe they cobbled together a little bit of their own savings, but things were pretty straightforward. They knew if they worked at the company for so many years at so much wages, they would get a certain amount of money to live on. And while that was pretty simple, life has definitely changed. Gone for the most part of those days of those pension plans. Now the big issue, so many of us are having to figure out how much money I actually have to be successful in retirement. The script has flipped. You're now in charge of making that determination, not the company and not the government. We really want to spend time on this topic because you have really had to take the ownership of your retirement success. You know, again, in that traditional view of retirement, things were pretty simple. You pretty much knew that if you worked for so many years at the company, that you would get a certain amount of money and you could take that with your Social Security and then put together some of your own personal savings, and you just had to make sure you didn't spend too much. Now, you may end up with $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, whatever dollars you have in your 401k or IRA. The issue is no matter how big that number grows, you still don't necessarily know, is it enough? And that's why it's so important that you have a comprehensive strategy that addresses what you want your ideal life to look like, because then that's going to tell you what you'll probably be doing. And after you know that, then you can start to figure out what those things are going to cost. And now we're getting a little bit closer to developing those important financial goals, which then lead us to, do we have enough money, or what course corrections do we need to be making? So in this new view of retirement, we really want to think about other aspects that maybe the prior generations didn't have to think about. Number one, retiring early. You're in control of your retirement destination and how successful you're going to be. Well, with that, you can decide to leave the company at age 60, at age 55, age 50, whatever age you want. You just have to make sure you have enough money. The other challenge that comes with that great freedom opportunity of choosing your retirement is most of us are living longer. So longevity is a big deal. You know, modern science has done some really amazing things for us, and it's given us a longer life. But with that longer life, we need to make sure that we have the proper amount of money to make it to the end of that journey. So you have to definitely think about longevity and all that spare time. What are you going to do? If all you've done is work and you haven't really taken the time to think about your ideal life and what you want to do with that freedom, it can get quiet really quickly. And you'll see folks who retire and they're right back in the workforce a year later because that vacuum of time was very empty for them. So it's very important that you properly plan financially, but I'd say it's equally important that you plan for your lifestyle and that freedom that you'll have. Okay, so now to our big questions. What are the things that we for sure need to get some answers for as we get started in our retirement planning? So number one, what's going to be our source of income in retirement? Well, in that traditional view of retirement, it was so common to be covered by a pension and Social Security. And while Social Security is still absolutely common, the pensions are much less common than they were 40 years ago. So now it's going to be, how do I cobble together all my investments that I've assembled in my lifetime and then figure out the distribution planning? All right, question number two, am I going to work or is my spouse going to work in any capacity? And that's an important thing to consider. Sometimes just for fulfillment, work in retirement can be a good thing, but it can also cover some of those financial gaps. So consider what type of work you may do or may not do in retirement. All right, number three, when am I going to retire? What age is that? What's that date? How about let's be even more specific and really put a specific date on there. And now the big thing is, does my spouse know this? Are we shared together on this vision of retirement? So we really want to be very specific about our goals. So think about that age and then convert it to a date specific. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think financial planning is so crucial to have a successful retirement, but it goes beyond the money. Your lifestyle is equally important. So think about all the non-financial things that are important in your life and how are you going to spend time on those? You know, the old rule of 168, that's how many hours we all have in a week. And how often have we said, oh, I wish I had more time? Well, when you walk into retirement, you don't actually get more time, but you get more control over your time. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to exercise more and work on your physical health? Are you going to spend time with your family? Are you going to volunteer? Are you going to do a hobby business that you've always wanted to do? Whatever it is, your vision is what's important. This is where we don't want to do cookie cutter planning. This is your opportunity to live your ideal life. Make sure you think about what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, who you're going to be with in this next phase of your life, and what you're going to be thinking and feeling when you're doing all these great things. Really visualize what that's going to look like, and that becomes empowering, and you'll start taking more actions to achieve that. Okay, so here's a recap of that traditional view of retirement and the new view, or what we believe is the common way of doing retirement planning today. You know, more is in your court, more is your responsibility to having a successful retirement, but you can do it. So you really want to begin with the end in mind. Think about where you want to be, when you want to get there in this next phase of your life, and work backward from that. Ask yourself all the important questions that you need to know, figure out what those blind spots on your plan, and then benchmark where you are now financially and figure out where you need to be and what are the steps necessary to bridge that gap. Now, we actually have another video that really goes into a lot more detail about how a financial plan should look, how you want to think about what we call what if scenarios, about all the different possibilities that you may want to experience in retirement. So take a look at that if you want to learn more about what we think a proper financial plan looks like and the things it addresses. So in recap, here are those 4 questions that you need to ask yourself. And now remember, these link back to those 8 lifestyle areas that are non-financial, but we think equally important. It all meshes together. Many people don't reach their financial goals for a variety of reasons. Don't let that happen to you. If you'd like to take advantage of some of our other resources to enhance your financial planning experience, we have links below, and they're also on our website. This content is all part of what we call our financial bootcamp process. It's a turnkey financial planning process that helps people get really comprehensive answers and gives them a great pathway to knowing they're well on their way to financial success. If you'd like to know more about that, obviously reach out to us at any time. We'd be happy to visit.